Israeli soldiers marched into Al-Dawayima on October 29, 1948, and by the time they left, the village had been emptied of its people and stained with their blood. What happened in those hours would be buried for decades beneath layers of military secrecy and political convenience. But the dead do not stay silent forever. Al-Dawayima sat in the foothills southwest of Hebron, a Palestinian village of roughly 3,000 people who lived among ancient olive groves and limestone terraces. By the autumn of 1948, the village had managed to avoid the worst of the fighting that had consumed Palestine since the British withdrawal and the declaration of the State of Israel 5 months earlier. Its residents were farmers, not fighters. They had no organized militia. And yet they were about to become the target of one of the most brutal operations of the entire war. What no one knew at the time, what wouldn't surface for decades, would change how historians understood the entire conflict. The operation that reached Al-Dawayima was part of a broader Israeli military campaign known as Operation Hiram, designed to seize control of the Negev and southern Hebron hills. Battalion 89 of the 8th Brigade, under the command of the Israel Defense Forces, was tasked with taking the area. The village itself held no strategic military value. It sat on no critical supply line. It guarded no mountain pass. But it was Arab, and it was in the path of expansion. The soldiers arrived in the early hours, and resistance was almost non-existent. A handful of armed villagers fired a few shots before fleeing into the hills. Within minutes, the village was effectively under Israeli control. The military objective, such as it was, had been achieved, but the killing did not stop when the shooting did. Soldiers moved through the village house by house. Witnesses later described scenes that belonged not to a military operation, but to something far darker. Villagers who had hidden in their homes, who had surrendered, who had offered no resistance of any kind, were dragged out and shot. Old men, women, children. The killing was not the chaos of battle. It was deliberate, it was methodical, and it went on for hours. Some residents had taken shelter in the village mosque, believing it would offer sanctuary. It did not. Others hid in caves on the outskirts of the village, ancient limestone hollows that had sheltered people in this land for millennia. Soldiers found them there too. The most damning evidence of what happened at Al-Dawayima came not from Palestinian survivors, but from Israeli soldiers themselves. In the weeks following the massacre, accounts began circulating within the military. Soldiers spoke to comrades. Some wrote letters. A few could not carry what they had seen in silence. One soldier's testimony, later preserved in Israeli archives, described the killing in language that left no room for ambiguity. He spoke of women and children executed at close range. He described bodies stuffed into cisterns. He recounted soldiers who showed no hesitation and no remorse. The acts he described were not the fog of war, they were murder. These were not anonymous accusations. These were statements from men who had been there, who had worn the uniform, who had watched it happen. And yet for decades, almost no one outside the military would hear a word of it. One officer refused to let the matter disappear. Israel Galili, who served in a senior political military role, received reports about Al-Dawayima and recognized their gravity. But it was a military figure closer to the ground who compiled the internal documentation, a report that laid out the evidence with the precision of a prosecutor building a case. The consequences of this decision would prove devastating, though not for the perpetrators. The officer who assembled the report was not promoted. He was not commended for his integrity. He was transferred, quietly moved away from any position where he might continue to press for accountability. The message was unmistakable. Silence was the only acceptable response. Agriculture Minister Aharon Sisling raised the matter in a cabinet meeting in November 1948. His words, recorded in minutes that would remain classified for decades, were stark. He compared the reported acts to atrocities committed by the Nazis, a comparison of extraordinary weight coming from a government composed largely of Holocaust survivors and refugees. The room heard him, and then the room moved on. The suppression of Al-Dawayima was not a single act of concealment. It was a sustained effort that required the cooperation of military officials, political leaders, and eventually the state's archival apparatus itself. Documents were classified. investigations were blocked or allowed to dissolve into procedural nothing. No soldier was ever tried, no commander faced a tribunal, no official inquiry produced a public finding. This was not an oversight. The new state of Israel in 1948 was fighting for what its leaders saw as survival. The narrative of the War of Independence, as Israelis called it, the Nakba, as Palestinians called it, was being written in real time. And in that narrative, there was no room for Al-Dawayima. A massacre of unarmed civilians by Israeli soldiers did not fit the story of a righteous army defending a young nation against annihilation. So the story was simply removed. The few journalists who heard rumors were discouraged from pursuing them. The military censorship apparatus, which held broad powers over press coverage of security matters, ensured that nothing reached the public. The villagers themselves, those who survived, were scattered across refugee camps in the West Bank and Jordan, their voices carrying no weight in a world that was not listening. For 30 years, Al-Dawayima existed only in whispered memory and locked filing cabinets. Then, in the late 1970s and 1980s, a generation of Israeli historians began prying open the archives of 1948. They were called the New Historians, and their work would shatter comfortable myths on both sides of the conflict. Benny Morris, perhaps the most prominent among them, uncovered documentation of Al-Dawayima and dozens of similar incidents from the 1948 war. His research, published in books and academic papers through the 1980s and 1990s, brought the massacre into the historical record for the first time. He cited military correspondence, soldier testimonies, and cabinet minutes that had been locked away for decades. The reaction was fierce. Morris was accused of anti-Israeli bias, of aiding the enemy, of distorting history for political ends. But the documents were real. The testimonies were real. The dead were real. And once the evidence entered public discourse, it could not be entirely pushed back into the dark. The exact death toll at Al-Dawayima remains disputed, and that dispute itself is part of the story. Estimates range from 80 to over 200 killed. Palestinian oral histories, collected from survivors and their descendants, tend toward the higher numbers. Israeli military documents, incomplete by design, suggest the lower end. The truth likely lies somewhere in the uncertainty, which is precisely where those who wish to minimize the event wanted it to remain. But the numbers, whatever they are, represent only one dimension of what happened. Al-Dawayima was not an isolated incident. Morris and other historians documented dozens of massacres, expulsions, and acts of deliberate destruction during the 1948 war. Deir Yassin, which occurred 6 months before Al-Dawayima, became internationally known. Tantura, Safsaf, Salihah, the list extended far beyond any single village, and then came the realization that would define everything that followed. Al-Dawayima was not an aberration. It was part of a pattern. The pattern was one of forced depopulation. Over 700,000 Palestinians were displaced during the 1948 war, their villages destroyed or repopulated. Al-Dawayima's residents never returned. The village itself was demolished. In its place, the Israeli settlement of Amatzia was established in 1955. Olive trees that had been tended for generations were absorbed into new agricultural plans. The landscape was physically rewritten. The classified report on Al-Dawayima was not merely a document. It was a test of whether a new nation, born in the shadow of genocide, could hold itself accountable for violence committed in its name. The nation failed that test. The officer who compiled the evidence was punished for his honesty. The soldiers who pulled the triggers lived out their lives without consequence. The cabinet minister who compared the acts to Nazi atrocities watched his warning dissolve into the official record like ink in water. The cost of that failure did not end in 1948. Suppressed history does not disappear. It metastasizes. Every decade that passed without acknowledgement deepened the wound, not only for the Palestinian families who carried the memory of their dead, but for the Israeli society that chose not to know. Accountability deferred is not accountability preserved. It is accountability destroyed. Al-Dawayima's story is now available to anyone willing to look. The documents exist. The testimonies exist. The archaeological traces of the village exist beneath the soil of a settlement whose residents may or may not know what lies under their feet. History does not require permission to be true. It only requires someone willing to read it, to sit with its weight, and to refuse the comfort of forgetting.